Hello everyone, my name is Jesse Lapai. My presentation is based on my term paper, in which the scenario I chose was scenario number 1. For this presentation, my audience will be for the local chief of police and other police officers and staff. The reasons for why I chose them as audience is because in terms of police service goals that I outlined later in the presentation, I'm going off a hypothetical situation where community feedback and comments has already been inputted and collected. In this case, within the brief description of Scenario 1, it states that local chief of police is assigned me to develop a plan to move the local policing service from a response-oriented approach to a community-based approach, and that other police officers feel they are too busy to make this adjustment and that some resistance to such changes are expected. There's some key info about this area that the police service covers. The area is comprised of several village and rural municipalities. The economy is based on farming and tourism. Transportation in the area is covered by a main primary highway and a number of local grid roads used by locals. Important groups in the area are event planning committees, government-elected officials, service clubs, churches, hobby groups, schools and students, farming community, the tourist community, highway users, business owners, and current officers. These groups and potential others are important to making partnerships and creating an efficient service delivery switch that allows for input and communication while preventing crime. Movement of the police service from a response-oriented approach to a community-based approach requires a few changes. First of all, though, what is community policing? Community policing is a policing style that views public safety as best achieved by having police and community work together to solve problems, and is done through decentralization of decision-making within the service. The principles of community policing is prevention, problem-solving, and partnerships with the community. This requires policy and organizational change and must be adopted by all police officers and employees within the service, and opposition at first is completely understandable. Other components are making officers more accountable to the public, involve residents to participate in activities, programs and committees, establishing relationships with neighbors, police, and other agencies to address crime and disorder in the community, gain input from citizens and all groups in the community, be visible and available in the community, take an interest in the neighborhoods and the problems, be proactive in its approach, understanding what has led to the issue, and representing the community through hiring of equal employment practices. How we view our police service in terms of efficiency also has to be looked at. In our community, crime is low to moderate and hasn't changed much over the past 5 years. Therefore, crime numbers and clearance rates may not be the best way for us to assess performance. Instead, we should be evaluating the partnerships the service makes with the community, experience with and perceptions of the police by the community, perceptions of sense of community by the police officers, the organization's ability to meet goals or objectives outlined by the community, or any other suggestions made by members of the community. This is more important as studies show that people who feel that their community are willing to put community interests above personal interests are attracted to their community, and they're more likely to be satisfied with local government services, greater likelihood to help with community improvements, and more willing to pay higher taxes. This can mean that the community would be willing to provide more money to the police service in the future. Since we have now established the principles and key points of community policing, we will now implement steps to gaining partnerships and preventing crime. The first step we will conduct is an environmental scan of our community. This scan produces information about demographic, social, and economic trends, crime trends, public perceptions, and satisfaction with the police, the impact of legislations and acts that govern how police officers perform their duties on the job, impact of technology, human resources, and finances. This helps our police service better understand the makeup of our community. After the scan, the next step is to engage in communication with groups and communities in the area. We will do this through as many modes as possible, such as media, letters, meetings, or open forums. In particular, 2 approaches that can be done to get important information and get to know community members better is doing door-to-door visits by officers and police community meetings. Door-to-door visits allow our officers to meet people in the community and ask questions pertaining to quality of life and views of the police service, as well as asking for suggestions. This can also give officers time to tell community members about community meetings or open forums. For businesses, groups, or residents that don't answer or aren't present, a community survey can be distributed to gain any further information. Police community meetings allow people to be vocal about concerns, opinions, and suggestions for police, and can allow stereotypes or questions to be answered. The importance of obtaining community feedback is so that every group or community in the area can be heard due to their unique needs. This allows our service to get an idea of what people think about our community and our police service. All groups need to be analyzed for how our service should partner with them and how to communicate and work together to prevent crime while encouraging opinions and suggestions on how to improve things. This helps us implement programs and organizational goals as well. After analyzing all information collected in community feedback, our police service needs to create an action plan based on that input and an environmental scan. We need to create short and long-term goals, perhaps based on a business model in which one such as the Vancouver Police Department Strategic Plan. This plan organizes goals based on a 4-year strategic plan in 3 categories: crime reduction goals, community focus goals, and organizational development goals. This action plan will help develop a framework for organization to strive towards to reach such goals. This will require a shift in how officers conduct themselves on the job. How officers conduct themselves requires a shift from simply reacting to crimes to being proactive, problem-oriented, and problem-solving using the PAIR model. Proactive policing means that patrols need to become directed or tactical, and there are 3 goals: achieve visibility, pursue proactive policing, and have a rapid response. Officers' presence allows us to engage with citizens while patrolling, potentially deterring someone from committing crime, and recognizing opportunities for criminal behavior and prevents that from happening by engaging with citizens. Problem-oriented policing means officers need to grasp what the problem is and whose it is. All factors need to be considered in what led up to the crime happening and how it relates to the community and its deeper issues. This is done through problem-solving and often requires more paperwork for officers than before, but allows us to gain more information and look into matters more efficiently. This information will be crucial to implementing solutions to problems and then assessing if they worked after. A model that works well, for example, is the PAIR model, which stands for Problem Identification, Analysis, Strategic Response, and Evaluation. The first step, problem identification, is for officers to gather information from witnesses and their perceptions, identify that perception, examine the problem, and consider information on the victim, the offender, and the situation. Second step, analysis, is to gain info on the underlying causes of the problem. This is based on a scale of the impact, seriousness, complexity, and solvability of the problem. Third step is to develop a response to the crime. Objectives are to eliminate the problem, reduce the size of the problem, reduce the harm or impact, improve response to the problem, and redefine responsibility for the problem. Some different responses can be further investigation or enforcement, use interagency services, education strategies, community mobilization, focus strategies, crime prevention strategies, or mediation strategies. The fourth step is to evaluate the response options and see if they're effective and if goals were achieved, how to make it easier in the future, and pros and cons of the strategy. Due to the uniqueness of our community, mainly rural and a small population, some programs wouldn't be suitable. For example, a resident police academy wouldn't be suitable as the amount of people in our community may not be large enough to make a program worth the financial cost to run the program. However, if the community indicated high interest in a program, it'd be in the best interest for a community to offer such a program and would increase rapport between our police service and the community. A more realistic program would be a volunteer community patrol for the villages, towns, and the local lake, if the community was interested in undertaking such a program, of course. As indicated in the Vancouver Police Department model, our service should adopt community-focused crime reduction and organizational development goals to provide a framework for programs and service initiatives. Community-focused goals for this community is community patrol, maintenance, and creation of community partnerships, establishment of a student resource officer, and engaging youth in sports and educational activities. Community patrol through volunteers could establish a better sense of community for all members. Officers within the service will do a foot patrol as well as often as possible, while engaging with people in a non-law enforcement attitude. This can help establish rapport with the community and the service, while also making people feel safer in the community. Maintenance and creation of community partnerships is a crucial goal, as people must feel connected to the police service, and doing this will make the community have a higher satisfaction with the service. This can be officers engaging with groups or attending meetings, helping with events, or showing up to local community events. The establishment of a student resource officer can allow the service to establish and build rapport with youth in the area. This also allows our officers to be role models and able to communicate with students. As well, officers should be encouraged to partake in sports or educational activities so that they have further communication with groups, and this can be doing such things as coaching, supervising, or showing up to local events and gatherings. Crime reduction goals for the community are reducing impaired driving, reducing property crime, and reducing collisions on the primary highway. Reducing impaired driving currently is not something our police service has data on. However, it could be a cause of the increasing frequency of crashes on the primary highways. Regardless if it isn't, reducing impaired driving is always in the best interest of the community. This means that our service in the community needs to create a community culture that shuns drinking and driving. Strategies to implement to do this is to create a volunteer driving service for intoxicated individuals, provide education through media and partnerships that drinking and driving is not accepted in the area, and create partnerships with local drinking establishments that puts workers through educational programs that prohibits them selling alcohol to intoxicated people and providing information to customers on getting home safely. Police efforts can involve police checkpoints and visits to establishments, acting as a deterrent for people to drink and drive. Reducing property offenses can be done through providing right information on ways to prevent crimes. The ways to do this can be get alarm systems or anti-theft devices for vehicles and buildings, encourage use of locks, telling neighbors if gone from house for an extended period of time, and never leaving personal items or electronic devices in sight. To encourage the community in partaking in crime hardening procedures, creating partnerships with local businesses that possibly allow discounts for such items or other possible savings or rewards could be beneficial. Reducing collisions on the primary highways can be done through more patrols of primary highway, adding signage on possible dangers of driving on the highway, and doing police checkpoints for detecting drivers under the influence. However, information included in community surveys and community engagements could help implement goals or other strategies to battle such problems. Organizational development goals for the community are encouragement and ongoing education for officers within community policing approach, establishment of a volunteer group working with the service, and encouraging volunteering for employees in the service. Encouragement and ongoing education for the officers within community policing approach means that the service provides support and education on what community policing is and isn't, and provides information on why community policing is best for the community. A key component of this is that studies show residents will be more supportive of the service and officers' mental health and job satisfaction will be higher. Education also should include multicultural awareness training to reduce possible racial biases or perceptions that officers have. Establishment of a volunteer group working with the service would include hiring volunteers who can work the front desk at the service, be a community representative who can answer questions for people or groups that may not be crime-related. Encouragement or a potential service requirement for officers and employees to volunteer within the community should be a goal. This will allow our officers to be viewed as more than a police officer and allow them to build rapport with people within the community. In conclusion, the movement from a response-oriented police service to one that is community-based will not be an effortless transition. This has to be supported by the community and their input. The shift within our service must occur at all leadership levels and the service as a whole. The action plan must be constantly reviewed, changed, and evaluated, and more importantly, as a service, we must stick to the plan and renew it on a term basis. If all steps are done to make the service delivery transition, our community and our police service will have a good relationship and improved quality of life. Thanks for listening to my presentation, and looking forward to comments about the presentation. Here's my references.